Hey, it's John at Matchless Web, and this is a rundown on how I got my website loading in 1 second or less worldwide using a combination of great hosting and some other great little WordPress plugins that help speed things along. So before I get started, I have to mention, I am not the person you see in the background photo. We look alike. Maybe it's the beard, but I just noticed that, and that's actually not to be confused with the guy in the background. Okay, first things first, this site is on Flywheel hosting. Fantastic managed WordPress host. Their support is amazing, and it's just really easy to work with their interface in the back. It's nice and clean. It's not too cluttered, and you would have to try really hard to break something on your own here. The support team does a lot to manage your server for you. So if you're not the type that wants to have to deal with any fine tuning of your server configuration, Flywheel is the way to go. Okay. Next, key CDN, the time to first byte test, the performance test here. Time to first byte is a very important metric when it comes to seeing how quickly a website is going to load. Ideally, you want that to be under 200 milliseconds. That's a Google page speed recommendation. But if you can have it under 100, even better, because the sooner your server can send out that first bit of information, or the first byte of information from your server, the sooner the rest of the cascade can happen, and the faster that the rest of your website is going to start loading. So a good time to first byte, again, sub 200 milliseconds is ideal, but under 100 is better. I'm based in Clinton, Mississippi. I honestly don't even know where my Flywheel server is. Embarrassing. I don't know that off the top of my head. Now I have to find that out after this video. But all you've got to know is my server is in the US, and yet the time to first byte worldwide is under, looks like it's under 50 in most cases. But then get on to Tokyo, Bangalore, the time to first byte is a little bit slower, but it's still well within range of what you would see. Let's see. All right. Speed test. This is on .com tools. This is a website where you can test a website from these computer servers that are all across the world. I didn't select all the location sites for this video, but in the screenshot attached in the post below this video, you can see I ran a test with more centers that this was running from. But in the test of these 10 different locations, you see that the first visit of the website a lot of times was already under 1 second. But the repeat visit is always going to be faster. I say always. It's generally going to be faster because after your website has been loaded or has been requested from a particular server in a geographical location in the world, the second visit or a repeat visit to get that same information again is going to be quicker because you will have cached some information on that server. So with each of these locations, you can toggle through them and see what the load time was for first visit and repeat visit. But this is just a great web speed. I can't talk today, y'all. Website page speed testing tool. I don't know what I'm saying, but maybe I've just had too much coffee today. But what I'm trying to say is the site is fast. So let me tell you how this is happening beyond just having a really great host. I've got to give a huge shout out to Gijo over at WP Speed Matters. This guy has just been a gift to the world with his fantastic blog articles and really helpful resources on making WordPress blazing fast. He is just he's a stud. I don't know what to say. I'm just so impressed with the stuff that he puts out, and I learn new stuff from his blog all the time. So check him out. He's got some fantastic free plugins on the WordPress repository, some of which I'm using on the site, and I'll show you how I have those configured in a second. But check out this site if you want to learn to speed up your website, because it's what I used to get a lot of the tips to make this stuff happen for me. Now, this article on WP Speed Matters is the one that I think most people would get the most benefit from doing. Okay, if you're not already on Cloudflare, this is a great reason to go ahead and do that. If you can get yourself on Cloudflare, Cloudflare is a content delivery network, and I will show you my settings here in a second, but it's a content delivery network that basically takes, if you can imagine the picture here, all the different data centers across the world. I know this is just a picture of Italy, but connects you to 100, I want to say it's like 140 something data centers in the world, where you can have parts of your website cached in these different server locations, so that whenever a request is made for your website, it can be loaded from the server that is within the closest geographical proximity to the IP address of the person making the search. So this article right here is what really unlocks the ability for the time to first byte on the key CDN test to be so good, because you're caching the HTML of your website on the edge servers that Cloudflare has around the world. Follow the instructions on this blog post and you will see what I'm about to show you now. But I'll just real quickly show you what the settings are in my Cloudflare account. Now, I am using the WP Rocket caching, or not caching. I'm using the, well, it does caching. It does page caching. Y'all, I'm struggling to talk, but I'm not re-recording this thing. I really do think I've just had too much coffee today. Can you tell by the picture over here that I might drink coffee? Oof, okay. Game face. Now, within Cloudflare, here are the settings. WP Rocket, the plugin for speed optimization, it does make some automatic adjustments to your Cloudflare account for you. For instance, I'm under the caching tab. It sets the caching level to standard. Time to live is 1 year. So if not cleared, the edge servers can store your information that is there for quite a long time if you don't clear the cache. It just really improves repeat visits to your website whenever you leave your different resources on the servers for a while. Coming back up here to the top, let me just mention this. In the speed setting, you have speed, and then over to optimization, you will see some of these auto minify. The minification for the assets of the website are minified here, JavaScript, CSS, HTML. And you'll also see when I show you the WP Rocket settings there, it is also minified there. So I don't know if it's like a redundant thing or not, or if you do one, it's doing it in the other. Not sure. Well, I guess that wouldn't happen because you can have a WP Rocket install and not have it connected to Cloudflare. So I don't know what the redundancy might be there or not. I'm telling you, I don't fully know how all this works. I just know the site's working fast. And so I'm just showing you everything. Rocket Loader is off. I know some people like that setting, but the WP Rocket plugin doesn't encourage that to be on. And just scrolling through, none of those other settings are really relevant here. But in the WP Speed Matters article, let's see. Oh, I'm not on that page yet, but just looking here. Standard. Wait, I was already here. Y'all, this coffee is getting to me. In the WP Speed Matters article, you will see instructions to set up these different page rules for your website. You're basically saying, I want the WP admin screen to not get cached. It's being bypassed. Anything in the back end of your website is not going to be cached based on this rule. Any of the preview pages that you might generate, if you are previewing a post or a page change from the back end of your site, and you then get a preview of what it looks like on the front before posting it, none of those things will be cached because they're also being bypassed. And then the cache level for everything else, which it's really going to be caching all those other those resources. This is the setting that is doing that and helping store your information on the edge servers worldwide, and that's why you're able to end up with some blazing fast load times here. Now, there's some other stuff going on in my website as well. Some of them are also using some of these other WP Speed Matters plugins, so I'll show you how those are set up here in a moment. I'd be remiss if I did not mention the theme that I'm running on this site is Generate Press Premium, and it is just a super lightweight WordPress theme that I have fallen in love with. Super fun to use. It does require a little more hands-on work than something that's maybe a little more user-friendly like your Divi page builder, which is the other theme that I use for the majority of the work I do. So you do have to get your hands a little more dirty with this, but gosh, it is so light and quick. So I can't recommend that enough. And I do have an affiliate link for that in the comment section below. So check that out if you're not already familiar with Generate Press, or if you don't want to use my affiliate link, just Google it. We can still be friends. Just kidding. All right. Before I show you the WP Rocket settings, just know if you're on Flywheel, they do have a article on optimizing the plugin for what they say would be most congruent with the hosting. So I recommend checking that out. I didn't follow the rules they have exactly, but basically what you're going to have here in the back end, they tell you to make sure that you select the separate cache for mobile users. Let's see, I didn't change anything there. In the file optimization, minify HTML is turned on. I'm hosting all my fonts locally, so I'm not toggling this on, but if you're using Google Fonts, you would want to turn on optimize Google Fonts. And I'll tell you a little more about the hosting fonts locally in a second. Minify CSS. There's a warning that pops up if you turn this combined CSS on, because what that effectively does, it groups together all of your CSS assets on your site and puts them all into one file and loads them together just to reduce the number of requests that are made on page load. That can break the styling of some sites, so it's not always going to be a good fit. And as you see in the little recommendation here below, it's not even recommended if your site uses HTTP2, which most people, if you're in the developed world and you have access to internet, you're probably on those more modern connections. So combining, some argue it doesn't improve anything or it's not really necessary, but it gives you fewer DNS requests, and I turn it on. It hasn't broken this site. Works. And then optimize CSS delivery just blocks render, helps eliminate the render blocking warnings you might get in any of these page speed tests. I don't have remove jQuery migrate turned on here because I have it actually turned off using another plugin, but this is a mostly deprecated version of jQuery, yet some websites still load it, and it's just not something that's necessary for my setup. And so I've turned it off, but I've just used a different plugin to do it. And then minify the JavaScript, combine JavaScript. So again, that's that same idea as with the CSS files, lump it all together so you have fewer total requests. Load that JavaScript in the footer, load it deferred, and then there's the safe mode for jQuery. So your jQuery isn't put in the footer, it's still allowed to load first, because a lot of other plugins and themes require your jQuery to run sooner in the page load for everything to work. So that's the file optimization. Under media settings, if you have WP Rocket, it is a good idea to use lazy loading for any of your images or video embeds. So you would want to turn those on. Again, I've used a different plugin, Perfmatters. Perfmatters is the plugin that I'm using for that. And so I'll show you those settings in a second, but you can, get rid of the emoji and WordPress embeds. All those are things that I did in Perfmatters. So that's why they're not checked. But if you have Rocket, include that. And I have a plugin called Smush Pro, which is WPMU Dev's image optimization plugin. And it has an option to turn on a CDN, which will take any images that are able to be served in the I can't talk. It allows your images, let's say you've got JPEG images on your site. If they're about to be served up to a person's browser and the browser is compatible with WebP, then they will get that smaller version of the file. And that plugin also, I can just jump to it. But that plugin also offers some other neat settings to improve your images. It compresses your images. The Pro plan, like I said, has the CDN if you want to use it to serve up your images. So it just takes a little more stress off your origin server where your website is hosted. Like I said, it compresses your images. I've got lazy load turned on. Did I say I had that turned on? No, I don't have it here. Oh, it's because I have it turned on in Perfmatters. So you can turn on lazy load in here if you want. But the CDN, this is one of the other really big things that's helping the site load quickly, is that the supported file types here, any JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, WebP images, they are going to be served in this next gen format that's just a smaller file size. And so that's really helpful for load times. And then this automatic resizing is really cool because it will take an image. Let's say you uploaded an image that is actually too big for its container. And so even though the image is only occupying, let's say, 500 pixels, if the image that you dropped in that slot is 2000 pixels, but it's being constrained to that small size, the file size of the 2000 pixel image is still what's being served, despite it being so small. So it's really common for people to have images that are just way too big for their containers on the site. And so this just resizes things on the fly. So you don't have to go in and manually, download your images from your site, resize them, and upload them again to try to get them a more appropriate size. This happens on the fly from the Smush CDN server. And like I said, you get that WebP conversion for any browsers that are able to serve those. If the user's browser is not compatible, then they just get the compressed, resized version of the image as it stands. Okay. Minimize that. All right. So I got off track on the image stuff. Okay. Preload. To preload your prefetch your DNS requests. This is one thing that speeds up your load time dramatically. You can grab any of the URLs, any of the items that are loading on your site that are not under your domain, represent something that could potentially slow down your load time because it's a separate DNS request that's something not coming from your server. And so you can use a test like the webpagetest.org or GTmetrix, Pingdom. They all have a waterfall chart, but you can look for anything that is not coming from your origin server and select it to be prefetched. Now you can see here's one of the WP EmuDev images. This was a WebP image that was dropped in, but see, I'm just scrolling down the list here to see what is something on here not coming from my server, so that I could, if I needed to, drop it in a list to make sure that file gets prefetched. Again, just makes it quicker for the browser to not have to go and look for these things. You're kind of notifying them ahead of time. Hey, any of these URLs, any of these could be part of what's requested on a web page. So just go ahead and be ready to expect that. And then preloading fonts. So I've got my fonts all hosted locally. And again, I'm using the GeneratePress theme. Wrong toggle. Using GeneratePress theme. And the documentation is super helpful. And they've got a solid community and really helpful support for them. And so by following some documentation there, which I'll link below, I was able to figure out how to host those fonts locally through some pretty quick instructions. But basically, find the right tab. All of these fonts are saved in a CSS file on my server. And so if I open up my CSS, the first things I have listed in here are all of the font files. So rather than using a Google font that the website has to go out, fetch, and bring back to deliver the font to the site, it lives on my server. So it's just yet another, a couple fewer DNS lookups. And so you see, I've got my fonts here, really loving this IBM Plex and IBM Plex condensed fonts. So there's just a really cool tool that exports all these. I didn't manually type all this out. That'd be nuts. But a nice little tool just let me select what fonts I wanted to use, and it gave me a little copy paste. So I just dropped it in here. And then, so that already comes with it. The only thing you want to add to it is this font display swap. That is something that prevents what they call the flash of invisible text on a web page load. Now, if I come back over here, if I'm on my site, if I refresh, all right, the page just refreshed and you saw nothing changed on the text there. So let's do this. Let's do this refresh. I'm clearing my cache this time, browser refresh. So make sure I'm not getting any cached files here. And yeah, things are being a little buggy just because I've got a million tabs open and I'm video recording in the browser. So things are being a little slow here. But you'll notice that there wasn't a change in the type of font that you saw here. It didn't start with one font and then flash to another one. that little quick change is just something that is another way the site gets slowed down more. And so I like to make sure that I've got the fonts preloaded and then add in that font display swap, and your fonts will just load super fast, and you don't have that weird little flash of text. And it also helps get rid of the a lot of times the Google speed tools like Lighthouse or Page Speed Insights will tell you to avoid flash of invisible text, and so that's the way that you can get rid of that. And then let's see, let me close this one out. I probably could close some of these as I've gone to save myself a little bandwidth here, but we're going to keep rolling. Last thing I've done here, this is one of the WP Speed Matters plugins. So again, shout out to Gijo. You guys need to go and check him out. This plugin is brilliant. What this does is lets you take any of the JavaScript files, any of the JavaScript assets that your web page is loading, and it lets you put a delay on when those scripts are actually going to run on a page load. So what I've done here is you're seeing these are little pieces off the end of the name of a file. So if I come back to this waterfall chart, this may not be, I need to find my assets. Okay. And I'm not seeing the things that I'm looking for. Oh, wait, there's a JavaScript. So this is the only JavaScript file that actually made it into the web, into the speed test. And that is something I really needed to highlight because, like I mentioned earlier, your jQuery is usually something that needs to load on the front end of a page load. So jQuery stays in, but you see there's no JavaScript actually listed as a resource in this. It's not because there wasn't any JavaScript on the page, because there definitely is. But this plugin, Flying Scripts, delayed the loading of any of those scripts. So rather than the page having to wait to load and run all of these different scripts, the page is able to actually get up and running, show people something on the screen so it feels like the page is actually loaded faster, which it has. And then after the page load is done and there's a timeout, and the user is now able to navigate your page, then whatever time duration you set here, then things will start running. And so if you could see the assets in the waterfall, they're delayed, so you're not seeing them. But if you could see them, you'd see things like my Google Tag Manager, my comments system that shows up on blog posts, the Discuss plugin. One of the form plugins that I use has 3 separate JavaScript files that would normally load on any page that there was a form on, and that reminds me, I want to show you this. So I use a lot of WP Devs plugins. I use their membership. I think they're a phenomenal company. They've got a lot of really cool resources. So and what do you know? I'm an affiliate for them too. So there's a link below. But again, if you don't want to give me some love, check them out from Google. But at the very bottom of this page, scrolling, I have one font or one form that is disappeared here. And it's because I discovered when I was doing some testing that this is an easy way to break the site by trying to do something that could actually help it load faster. So I'm finally getting around here to mentioning this Perfmatters plugin. Perfmatters is cool. It is a feature-rich plugin that really just helps you strip a lot of stuff out of WordPress that you might not need, and really helps speed up the site. So a lot of settings in here are some of the same ones that you would see in WP Rocket or similar plugins, like disable emojis, embeds, query strings, all this stuff. There's the get rid of jQuery migrate because I don't need it. Just getting to disable lots of things. Again, I'm not using Google Fonts, so I can turn that off. That's another resource I don't have to use. And there's my lazy loading. So the images, any iframes and videos, all of those can be lazy loaded. So they're not getting, the page doesn't have to load every single image before actually showing the user anything. You can just have the page load and show show everything that is above the fold, and then start trying to load those other images as the user scrolls down. So it waits until the images are actually going to be needed before trying to download those resources. So lazy loading is hugely beneficial for improving your load time, and it enhances the user experience too, because they're not having to wait around for a long time for your images to become available. Let's see. But yeah, sorry, I'm going back here to the flying scripts, but really all you do, you take a little snippet off the back end of these files that just gives an indicator of what it is that they do. And that is what tells the script to not run until 5 seconds or whatever time after things are done. All right, now, so these are the Forminator JavaScript files that I tried experimenting to see like what would happen if I just got rid of these altogether. Because not only does Perfmatters offer some of these great options, you can, similar to WP Rocket, you can integrate your CDN and do link rewrites so that you're reducing DNS requests, because then everything looks like it's coming from your own domain. If you wanted to host Google Analytics locally, you can set that up too, which is another great performance thing. Gijo has a great article on that. So another shout out, WP Speed Matters. That's another great way you can make your site faster, not have to load up Google Analytics tracking every time. Get over here to extras. So there's this thing called the Script Manager. Script Manager is a plugin that lets you turn off plugins per page on your website if you don't need them to load. And it also allows you to maybe just pick a few files out of those plugins to not load on a page. So the reason that right now my form is not showing on my homepage is because in real life, when I'm not doing this video, these files are just getting loaded 5 seconds after page load. They're not gone altogether. But the reason they're turned off right now is because in the script manager, all right, so I'm going to go to my, let's see, so I need to go to my pages. So I'm going to go to my home page, and then I'm just going to grab here's a script manager link. This would also be visible on the front end, but if you were logged into your admin and have your toolbar showing. But if I open up Script Manager for this page, what you get is this list of all the plugins and their respective files, their CSS and JavaScript on the site. And so you see here, I have turned off, in this example, a piece of JavaScript and a piece of jQuery for validating form fields. So I was experimenting earlier, and I was like, well, I'm not validating my fields for phone number format or email format. So maybe I'll see what it does to turn these off just in this location. So I didn't turn off my forms like site-wide by hitting the big switch here. I just said, let me try to turn these things off. And that made things not work. So what I need to do is go back to having these on. But you see there, if you toggle something off, you can either let that change be global, tell it to be off everywhere on every page, or have it on your current URL only. And in this case, this is one where I'm just saying, I'm going to turn that back on. But as you scroll down your page, you see all of the different plugins and the resources that are being loaded on the page. So there's probably some other stuff in here that I could toggle off, other resources I could toggle off to eke out even more speed on this page. But this is a super, super powerful type of plugin where you're able to turn some things off when you don't need them. I'm not using this pricing table plugin on this page, so it's off. I'm not using Toolset Blocks, which is what I used to generate my custom post types and display my portfolio items on this. Since none of that's on that page, I turned it off. So anything not being used can turn it off. And you know what? I'm not using this search function on my homepage, so that can be off. So this is just another way that you can really whittle down what your page load is like. I don't think I have any social icons. See, I haven't even gone through all these settings yet, and they're still there's still room for improvement. Well, these are in the mobile menu. These are in the mobile menu if you're looking at my site on your phone. So I will leave that on. But you see, I'm just scrolling through things and finding, this is a plugin that doesn't actually show on my homepage. So per this page, and I do need to actually select it's the current URL where I've turned something off. So make sure I've double checked all that. Current URL, anything that I've turned off. Okay. And then you get into other resources that might not explicitly be tied to a plugin. Some of these might just be native WordPress or could be related to your theme. I don't know, but this theme file itself gets labeled as the theme. So this other stuff is just native WordPress. So there are other plugins that do this kind of thing. I want to say there's one called Plugin Organizer. I know there are others that let you disable plugins and go by file to turn things off if you want to experiment with seeing if it improves the page load time. But it can be a lot of trial and error, because oftentimes if you're turning off pieces of plugins or plugins to break things, just like I did with that Forminator form. And so now if I were to refresh my homepage after having turned the JavaScript back on for the form plugin, if I get back down here to the bottom, so it's still not showing yet because it's the page has already been cached. So I would need to flush my the rest of my cache through Cloudflare and off my server. But this video is already too long, so I'm about to wrap this thing up. Last thing, one more WP Speed Matters plugin. Now this is not for page load time, but this is for internal page navigation. And if you navigate around the WP Speed Matters site, you will see just how great this is. But Flying Pages is a plugin that it basically predicts what links might be clicked next based on what's in the viewport when someone is scrolling down the page. And you can set some things up to where, for instance, right now the way things are set, I want to make sure I get this right. So right now the way things are set, when there's a link that comes into the viewport, then per second up to 3 requests can be made for that for the link that is in the viewport to go ahead and be basically prefetched or pre-requested, just in case someone goes ahead and clicks on that link. There's that pre-connect, just like you've got with the font files that I showed you in WP Rocket. This is just another way of saying, like, hey, this is about to be the next thing that someone asked for, so let's go ahead and start preloading it. And you can have it set to where instead of acting off of the viewport, it's acting on mouse hover only. So if I were to have this active, I could set an amount of time that says, like, hey, when someone hovers over a button just before they click, so 50 milliseconds before they click, then that page or whatever is at that link would go ahead and be prefetched, so that by the time the click actually happens, the subsequent page just comes in even quicker. Now this can really, if you were to leave this unlimited, this could really give you a lot of server load. So it's not recommended just to have this thing unlimited. So I've just got it set on 3, but everything else works, pretty straightforward there. So that, again, is not for page load time, so it's not going to make any of that faster, but navigating internally within your own website is going to be quicker. For instance, if I grab an internal link on my homepage, I'll click my story, see how quickly that just snapped to the front. I mean, the site is already, like we said, it's fast on its own, but having that Flying Pages in there just makes those internal link clicks just even snappier if you're navigating from one page inside your site to another page inside your site. Just another example, if I grab this contact link, as soon as the page pops up, boom, fast. All right. Now this is an example here where my Forminator form would be sitting right here, but since I had those files turned off. That has all since been cached. So this is the version of the page we're seeing. But after the video is done, I'm going to clear all my cache stuff out and that'll all be done. Okay. This video was terribly long and I've more or less stuttered through some of this, but I just wanted to share all this information with you, show you my cards on how I got this website loading as quickly as it is. It's got me pumped up. I really like this. Generate press theme is fun, and all the different tools that I'm using to make everything else happen also fun. And I've had to, over time, just in the past couple of years, just pick up some stuff here and there and gradually build a little knowledge base to where I could make this happen for myself. And I really wish somebody could have done that for me and maybe save me some time. So I hope that by watching my site breakdown here, it gives you a little more clarity on how I got this WordPress website loading so fast worldwide. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and like the channel. Hit that subscribe bell if you want to see any future videos that come out. And let me know if you have any questions about the setup. I'd be glad to take a look at what you've got if I can be of any assistance in helping you put in place any of the techniques used here. All right, I'm John, and this is Matchless Web.